Thank you for joining today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of Matthew. Today we're going to be starting chapter 10. Go ahead, open up your Bibles, take a look at all of chapter 10. We're going to go ahead and go through it bit as we move forward into the study. Today, I wanted to speak just about chapter 10 in general, because chapter 10 starts a new section in the book of Matthew. If you remember, back when we read in chapter 5, we started the Sermon on the Mount, which went from chapter 5 to chapter 7. We learned that there are actually 5 of these discourses throughout the book of Matthew. In other words, Jesus teaches, actually gives us a sermon, if you would, 5 times in the book of Matthew. And you can find them if you want to. If you have one of those red letter Bibles, you can start flipping through Matthew and you'll see where all those red letters are at the same time. And you'll recognize that this is Matthew giving us one of Jesus's messages or sermons. We call them discourses. And this is the second discourse of 5 discourses. The first one, of course, was the Sermon on the Mount. This is the second one. Will be a third one in chapter 13, a fourth one in chapter 18, and the last one will be in chapters 24 and 25. So each one of these have a topic basically, and we can talk about them. And in this case, this one is called the Missionary Discourse. And we call it the Missionary Discourse because we're going to see that it's about Jesus sending his disciples out to be missionaries in the world. But let's talk about this a little bit. First, this actually kind of starts at the end of chapter 9. Chapter 9 gives us this transition from the message that Matthew was giving us about Jesus into this new message. Remember, the message right before this was about the power of Jesus. We saw Jesus able to have power over healing, over demons, over seasons and weather, over salvation. We saw him having power over all these different things. And then at the end of that, Jesus says that harvest is plentiful, the workers are few. In other words, he looks out there, he sees all these people who don't know him, don't know the truth, don't know the gospel, and his heart breaks. He has compassion for them, and he prays for missionaries to go out to tell them. So here's the transition. As he transitions and he gives us this hint at the end of chapter 9, this is important to him. Now we're going to go into chapter 10 and see Jesus actually do something with that. So what he's going to do during this chapter is first, he's going to call his missionaries together. We call them disciples. He's going to call his disciples together and he's going to send them out. He's actually going to commission them. He's going to send them out into the world to do the work. The second thing we're going to see is we're going to see that he's going to send them out to the people who they know, who they are familiar with, who are of their kind. In this particular case, the Israelites. Then we see after that, he's going to actually send them past that, and we're going to see about missionaries working with non-Israelites, or in other words, Gentiles, or people who are not like the missionaries, very unlike the missionaries. And finally, the whole section, as much of this part of the chapter is as big as the rest of it. The rest of that chapter is about what it looks like to be a missionary, to be a disciple. What's going to happen to you? What are you going to face? What are your priorities? What do you look like? And so we're going to see that towards the end of this chapter. Now, the big question we need to ask ourselves as we enter into this chapter is, well, I see Jesus giving this big message to his disciples. What does it have to do with me? How does that affect me? In fact, does this even apply to me? And that's a great question because it's so important for us to know that when we read the Bible, when we study the Bible, when we try to understand the Bible, we need to know who the audience is. Now, once we know who the audience is, we need to know what the audience believe about what the writer's saying. In other words, how does the audience understand these words? The Bible will never say something to the original audience it does not say to us, and vice versa. God doesn't have these secret messages in the Bible that it means one thing if you discern it and to figure it out over here, and then it means something else if you figure it out over here at another time in another place. It's the same message, always the same message. So if we understand what Jesus is saying, to whom he's saying it, and what it meant to them, we can understand whether or not or how he's speaking to us today. So as we understand that, we look at that and we see absolutely he's talking to his disciples. It's clear as day. He's talking to his disciples. The question is he talking to us? And what is he saying to his disciples? He's saying to his disciples, go out and preach the gospel to the people you know, to the people you don't know. There's going to be a lot of things you're going to have to deal with while you do this stuff. And how do I know that's for us today as well? Because right before that, Jesus said, pray for the workers. And obviously, he wasn't telling his disciples to pray for themselves. He was telling his disciples to pray for others who would come after them to do this work. And that would be you and I. So we see that this is really for us as much as it is for the disciples. There might be some details that doesn't fit our time, right? Whenever we read the Bible, we look at what the history is, what the historical context is, as well as the grammatical context. So we're going to see the points, spirit, the objectives are for us as much as it is for them. So with that, next time we're going to start into the actual verses. If you have any questions, thoughts, or comments on chapter 10 in general, go ahead and put them in the comment section below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have a wonderful day, and God bless you.